My name is Blaine Williams, and this is my final video presentation for the MAT program. I did my internship with T.C. Robertson High School in Buncombe County through August of 2016 through May of 2017. Beginning the program, some key points. Being aware of the learning curve was huge for me because I was unaware of it at first. Moving into the program from undergraduate to graduate course was a huge change for me as well. And having the learning curve of online classes, graduate level work, all that transfers into also being aware of the learning curve in the classroom. You're like moving from a student to a teacher is a huge change because you're not just trying to sit back and learn information. Now you are trying to convey your information that you know as well as develop your craft as a teacher. Staying positive was another huge thing during my internship because there were lots of bumps and ups and downs that you have to overcome. And staying positive really made it a possibility for me to move through my internship at a good pace and continue through the material and developing my teaching skills. Collaboration is huge. Collaborating with other teachers saves so much time, it's unreal. Dr. Carroll said it at the very beginning of the program whenever we first began, is don't try to reinvent the wheel, and that has never been more of a true statement than I learned in my internship. Not trying to reinvent the wheel. Other teachers have been there, they've done it. Anything you can think of, someone has done that or done a variation of that. Collaborating, getting insight on a lesson plan that you might be trying to develop, even worksheets to add to a lesson. Collaboration will save you so much time. And that's what I found out. Developing lessons, asking other teachers, well, how did you do this? Do you think I could borrow that? I would say 99% of the time, all of my teachers that I had talked to were more than welcome to give me what they knew, as well as sheets, layouts, plans, structured lessons to try and add to the lesson that I was creating to help me move through the program and as well as the course that I was teaching. That way the students could benefit more from what I was trying to teach them. Communicate often. I couldn't stress this enough as a key point when beginning the program. Communication will take away any guesswork within the program if you're not sure about what you're trying to get done. For me, there were lots of times I didn't understand things, and at the beginning of the program, I learned that when I didn't understand something, I tried to do it. I was obviously not going to do it correctly, so I began communicating more, and this helped me probably the most moving through the program and what I was trying to get done. Communication with my teachers, understanding what they needed from me and what I needed to give them. And then communication in the school as well with what the school's policies are, trying to communicate as far as half days, lesson plans, pacing guides. Communication is a huge key. Being involved. I loved being involved within the school because it did more than just show the teachers I was in the classroom. It showed them that I was very invested in what I was doing. I wanted the other teachers to realize that I wasn't just a student teacher there going to teach a few classes and then leave. I was there for the experience, to learn from them to my best ability and learn from the school environment. Being involved to me means going to the athletic games, going to all the meetings, going out to lunch on half days with the rest of the staff, being involved and really immersing myself in what was around me helped develop my skills as a teacher just as much as anything else, because a lot of things that you might learn in a classroom don't transfer over as well if you're not involved with the people who are actually in a classroom teaching every day. So my teaching philosophy. My teaching philosophy changed a lot throughout this program. Coming out of college, I had had 4 years of lecture courses in history, and that is a lot being drilled at you in how a history class should look, especially from a professional level. When I was moving into this internship, my idea of a history class would be lots of lectures and lots of discussions. And what I had to find out the hard way was students don't always want to talk. They don't want to have discussions. They also don't want to hear you lecture a ton. Whenever you are lecturing a ton, they zone out, they'll fall asleep, and they won't want to come to class. It's just a fact. I had many students in my very first week just kind of zone out. I could see it in their eyes, they weren't listening. Had a couple fall asleep, and I realized I had to shake things up. So, one of the key points of my teaching philosophy became adaptability. Leave room to grow. With adaptability, I realized I had to adapt my own teaching philosophy and kind of change it based off what was going on around me. I needed to, on this specific day, students were falling asleep and zoning out. On one of my first lessons I was giving, I had to throw everything out of the window right then and there and wing that lesson to try and bring the kids back, wake them up, and have them actually learn something out of that lesson. So adaptability is huge. Staying interactive. I love staying interactive, and I want that to be a part of my teaching philosophy. And it's something that when I first started out with wanting to have discussions, I wanted the kids to be interactive. But like I said, a lot of times kids don't want to talk to you about what you're trying to teach. So making it interactive for them and fun is a huge part of my teaching philosophy as well, because I want them to learn what we're talking about, be interactive, awake, and involved, and enjoy themselves. So by staying interactive, I ask students questions while we're going through. If we're doing a lecture, even just a little bit, I ask them questions. I have them involved in discussions, involved with each other. When they first come in, one of the ways I started keeping them interactive was they sit down. If we're going over a subject, I even have them turn and talk to each other about that subject, whether it's about what they know about that subject, what they don't know about that subject, making charts, anything to get their blood flowing and minds moving right off the bat. So staying interactive is one of my top points. Build off of what the students need. Whether they do it intentionally or not, students will let you know what they need, whether it's by failing on a test, falling asleep in class, coming up to you and asking for help and telling them that they need more of this. Once you get that information from them by assessing those things, you got to build off of what they need. If you're stuck in a certain way of doing things and you continue to do it, students may not learn that way. Those students you're teaching will not learn the subject that you're trying to get across to them. So you've got to build off of what the students need, and off of their needs is what makes education so important. Create a comfortable learning environment. I love having students be able to come in and talk to me about what they need, talk to me about their day, tell me how the games went, ask them, well, how are you today? Good, I'm hungry, I'm this, I'm really tired, I didn't get a lot of sleep last night, we had a lot of homework, anything. I want them to feel comfortable with me and have a good rapport with my students so that when I start teaching, they want to come to class. They want to come listen to what I have to say because I enjoy listening to what they have to say. Once you create that comfortable learning environment during your lessons, they want to talk. They want to talk with you about your lesson. They want to have that discussion to get that deeper level of learning. And so this is all of my teaching philosophy and everything that I try to bring to a classroom. My behavior management plan. So a lot of my focus is in my behavior management plan. Accountability, setting standards, being clear, and being welcoming. Starting off with accountability, the way I have my behavior management plan set up is really simple and structured. I have the parent and guardian and student signatures at the bottom. I want them to sign this like a contract. Everything that we talk about during class on the first day, I'll read this with them. They'll take it home, read it with their parents, and then they sign it. They will be held accountable for everything that we've discussed in this behavior management plan, as well as everything that I told them I need from them. It's very important, and one of the things that I will add to my future behavior management plan is a late work accountability. Students, if they figure out they can get by with any late work, they'll get by with all late work. So for future reference, for me, this late work that I'll allow students to bring in is only if it's a valid reason for it being late. Otherwise, no late work. And them signing this will make them accountable for it. Setting standards, like I just mentioned with the late work, here I have an expectations with behavior and responsibilities. And one of those standards that I set for them is if you're absent on the day of a test, you must set up a time to make up the test with me. Failure to make up the test within 3 days of your return for absence will result in a 0. So I've set that standard. You've got 3 days after you miss school and you've missed a test on that date to make up that test. And if you don't, then you don't get to make up that test. It's very strict. I have time before and after school. They need to come in and do it. Being clear. I'm very clear in this to what I want. Being welcoming, I'm also very welcoming. I don't want the students to come in, read this the first day, and feel like, wow, Mr. Williams is telling us all the things we can't do. This is going to be an awful year. No, I want them to come into class, listen to the rules. There's a lot more that we would talk about going through this that isn't on here, and that's fine because I have my main points. But I want to be welcoming as well. My first paragraph, it's very light. It's an introduction. It's a welcome back. Expectations for the class are very high. I give the rundown of what this class is, what we'll be going through, and it's just very simple, not too information heavy, just bringing it to their focus. And then we run through the list. And once they've taken this home, brought it back signed, I'll take it up for a grade as well. It puts a little more incentive for them to bring it back. So planning a lesson. One of the first focuses for planning a lesson is state standards. They are required. It's good to know them, and you have to involve them in your lesson. What they are tested on at the end of the year with the state test are these state standards. You want to make sure that you cover those, you hit on them, and they learn them. So when beginning a lesson plan, the best structure you can have is starting out with the state standards. What for this lesson is required in the state standards for them to know? And then you can really break it down and develop your lesson with that and develop your learning targets around that. Making it relevant. There are so many things that are going on in our country today that mimic the past and history of our country. So making it relevant to the students is a very important detail. Bringing the students in with the material and helping them understand that things that are happening in the present will happen in the future are directly affected by the past. So with each lesson, I try to bring in something to make it relevant to their lives, whether I'm joking about communism or trying to bring in a very strict lesson of they need to know about nationalism. Any way that I can get them involved and make it relevant to their lives so that they understand it. Keeping students engaged goes along with making it relevant and having that good rapport with the students, making them want to be there and want to learn. For me, to keep the students engaged, I use a lot of assessments, formative assessments, by interacting with them, keeping them engaged through political cartoons even. Having a political cartoon in the middle of one of my lectures is probably one of the best ways I can keep students engaged. It's a pause from notes. We stop everything, we're looking at the political cartoon, and they've got to break it down, analyze it, and figure out how it relates to the lesson I'm teaching. By doing that, they are getting a higher level of learning, a better historical sense, and making those connections. And it really keeps them involved with what we're learning. They're taking the time to really assess what's going on and be in that moment with that material. Along with that, constantly assess. I am always asking them questions through our lessons, having those conversations and discussions with my students about what we're learning, giving them little charts to fill out, whether it's a Frere model or a T-bar chart. I want to make sure that I know as a teacher that they're understanding the topics they're learning. And if they're not, then there's something I have to do to try and get them to understand that. The political cartoons work really good for assessing whether they understand the way the subject that I'm teaching is turning out. With the good political cartoon that I used was World War I, whenever America pulled out of the League of Nations. It was a bridge with the single stone in the middle missing that would have completed the bridge, and it was labeled US. How did I find out that my students understood what we were talking about? Because they made the connections that the rest of the stones was the League of Nations, and the one keystone that was missing was the US. Therefore, the bridge didn't work, so the League of Nations didn't work. It worked great. The students knew what they were talking about whenever they broke down the image. I felt confident that they understood the topic. We moved on. It was a good assessment of their knowledge during the lesson. Build off of reflections. For my lesson planning, building off of reflections is very important to me because it doesn't necessarily help you in the moment with that lesson after the fact, but the next year you might be able to modify that lesson based off of that reflection. But also, more directly, the next day, if something doesn't go well that day, you write that in your reflection or you make a note of that. For the next day's lesson, you build off of that reflection and realize, okay, they didn't react well to this video, this 5-minute video I showed. They found it really boring. They didn't understand it. It didn't go well. Well, the next day, I'm not going to show a 5-minute video that's boring and didn't go well. I'm going to try to bring some other aspect into it, put in a source for them to research, anything to get them more active in their learning, and building off of that reflection really helps as teachers develop their own craft. Here's an example of a lesson plan that I did. I personally feel like this is one of my better lessons, and this template was used in my diversity and equity class through Nororon. So I'm using it because it is the most structured lesson that I have, and it really breaks down every aspect of this lesson. And so I only put a few pages in here to give examples. This is kind of the beginning. I have the topic, the lesson entitled America Enters the War. So the lesson that we were going to go over was right before America was entering World War II, and there was still a lot of isolationism in the minds of Americans. We didn't want to get involved, and so this was a really great lesson to role play those aspects of the United States trying to make that decision to get involved in World War II. So I have my learning segment and my topics and themes. America Enters the War. I have my resource materials that the students will need. Very simple for this lesson. They needed their textbook, some blank sheets of paper, some think right sheets, and a notebook or computer for research. So next, you go into the prior knowledge. You have to understand the prior knowledge that your students have moving into the next lesson. For me, I understood what we had went over. The students had been immersed in the rise of dictatorships throughout the beginning of the unit. We talked about Germany splitting Poland with Russia, Japan's aggression with the areas around it, including China, which will play a role in one of our last activities that we do. Their prior skills, prior academic language, all that pulls into building a lesson for the next day and for the next unit even. You have to understand what your students know. So next big thing is learning targets. Learning targets are so important, and they bring so much of your lesson to the forefront because it is very straightforward. This is what you need to know by the end of this lesson. For here, my learning targets are: I can analyze and assess the reasons for the United States entrance into World War II. I can demonstrate an understanding of the effects on diverse cultures in the U.S. regarding World War, part of our activity at the end as well, so you'll get to see a very good example to how we achieve that. I can provide arguments regarding interpretations of isolationism in World War II. So from that, the content standards are right under there, and some of the first content standards you have: understand how and why the role of the United States in the world has changed over time. That will come out very clearly in this lesson. And it's just so simple. And then understand the impact of war on American politics, economics, and society and culture. That one will be very clear as well. There are probably 6 or 8 more standards that I added with this lesson, but those two are very good examples that you'll be able to see at the end. So evidence of assessment. Right here I have my formative assessment and my summative assessment. I'm big on formative assessments. As you can see, it's a big section. I do a lot of it compared to my summative assessments. As for summative assessments, I have: finally, students will be assessed in their accuracy of their studies and comprehension. The way I would do that: quizzes or tests. The reason I don't have more summative assessments is because I don't feel like it's very good for the students or helps them at all to have quizzes every minute to see if they're getting what they're understanding. We cover a section, I give them a quiz on it. That's not helping them any. What helps them is if we finish a section and I ask them questions about that section so I can see if they understand it or not. And if they don't, then I bring them into a deeper level. For example, for these formative assessments, students' progress will be measured in how accurately they can represent their ideas in cause and effects charts, group discussions, assessing how well students put together main ideas and concepts from the lesson. The best way I can put it: they bring everything together and it works great, especially whenever you're interactive with them. So I have good examples here. This is how the lesson's timing will go from beginning to end. I bring the lesson together, very strict instructions for how this should be going structure-wise. My end closure, which is my big assignment for the end, to bring all of those learning targets together. We start with the Americans as a whole. I have them role play this. I ask them: all right, you're Americans in this time, right before World War II. How do you feel about going into the war? We discuss it. They turn and talk with each other. They tell me how they feel, if they support it or they don't. Then we go down again to European immigrants. Same thing. Well, all right, even narrower: how would Europeans feel about going to fight with countries that they might have immigrated from? You get 2 different sides of the spectrum. We go even narrower: African Americans, how would they feel about being drafted to fight a war for a country that doesn't even really recognize them as true Americans? Then Asian immigrants, and we bring in stereotypes of how Americans might perceive Asians once we're fighting the Japanese. Are all Asians going to be considered Japanese? Do the Chinese want to fight the Japanese? Wouldn't China like their homeland back? Breaking this down to deeper level of thinking to really role play, put them in the scenarios, and it broadens their historical sense of how this interaction changed the roles of these people and how they saw the war. So that goes through. I have it very strict through there. The end: supporting students with special needs. You have your 504 plans, your IEPs. You'll have those for all your students, or at least some of them in all your classes. There will be something, whether it's extended times on tests. For my 504, it was really simple. I had a girl who had a service dog. She had to have special seating. It's really simple stuff. So an experience of impact that was very influential on me through this was on one of the days I got to school, and I had finished my student teaching, and I was back into my observation period at the end of this course. And my cooperating teacher was supposed to be proctoring ACTs, and his daughter got in a bad car accident, had to go to the hospital. He had to leave that day right away. The administration was like very helpful, told him he needed to leave, he had to go. Administration took hold of the situation, proctored one of the exams. His classes he had to teach at the end of the day, I taught, and then other teachers rotated with me in that to make sure that everything was getting done. And so within that, I learned that the staff that you work with is more than just workmates and staff members. It's more than just that. You are a faculty family. It was huge to me, especially after being involved with them. I saw that they really care about you as an individual more than just as someone who works a job with them. They care about you. They want you to do well. They checked on my cooperating teacher constantly to make sure that he was doing fine, his daughter was okay. And it really showed me that there's more to teaching in a school than just the teaching aspect. You create this connection. Teamwork. I was a part of that team. It was very important to me. It showed that the teamwork really brings everyone together and to accomplish the main goal of what they want to get done. This experience brought all these to the forefront from me and actually made me want to be a teacher even more because I saw how they work together to help each other in this situation. And that's the way it should be every day. Anything that anyone asks, they are family with each other, they work together, they care about each other, they want each other to succeed, and it was shown. So, internship advice. One of the biggest points of advice that I could give anyone is keep a record of everything. Emails, meetings, you want to make sure there's some sort of copy or record of everything. And that's not to say that it's because bad things will happen, but if you were to be questioned or asked about anything, you have a record of it. All the way to grades. A student wants to know a student didn't turn something in. You say, sorry, it's a 0. You signed a contract that you would turn things in on time, you didn't turn it in. Maybe you should also write down, student did not turn this assignment in on this date, date it and time it, so that when their mom calls or dad calls and wants you to change their grade because they're a point away and you feel like that student didn't do enough by not turning that in, your administration can back you up as a teacher and as that faculty to make sure that they have everything that they possibly can to support you in that decision not to bump their grade because they didn't do that work, and you have a record of that. Networking. Networking is key because my cooperating teacher within the Buncombe County Schools, he had been at the school I was student teaching at for 22 years and in that same county for 22 years. He had a lot of networking with other counties, other schools, people that have come and gone. Networking will get you very far as a teacher, building who you are and who you know to help you get things done, even outside of the classroom in athletics, with other faculty, whatever you can do, network as much as possible. I left my internship with so many contacts within that school, within other schools, and when I become a teacher at another school, I'll have those contacts. If I need lessons, I need advice, if I need another job, I have those networks to help really propel me into the future. And those are the two main things that I could advocate for anyone is keep a record of everything and network as much as possible. Be present where you're at and really be involved in what you do. And that has been my internship, and everything I've learned from it was amazing. And it really has helped me move forward in my own craft. And that's the end of this presentation, and thank you for listening.